Adam, welcome back to the podcast.
My brother, always a pleasure to be here.
Always good to see you, and I would love to jump right in. So let's just say we have somebody who's 200 pounds, 30% body fat. They want to get to 10% body fat. What's the first thing they need to do?
Okay, so the first thing is we want to optimize health, right? And that is, it sounds so obvious, but it's really not because the first thing that people think when they're that overweight is like, oh, I just need to get the weight off. So start cutting calories and start moving and start exercising, and that'll make me healthier. And to an extent, that's true, but that's also a slippery slope to head down a path where you are under consuming what your body needs and overtraining, and then you're stuck in this plateau. You're at 30%, you get down to 20, 25, and you can't budge, and you're eating hardly anything and you're training like crazy. So it's very important that we kind of assess where you're at first before. And so this was a big shift, by the way, in how I would train clients. So my early career, we used to print off a diet. I would assess their body fat percentage, like you just said. What is their goal? Their age, their sex, how much they move, and I would spit off this diet. Like, this is what you should eat. Like, completely threw that way a way of training, and it turned more into this. So if you were that client, I'd say, all right, Doug, for the next week, this is what I want you to do. Before we dive into this drop in this body fat percentage, I actually want you to track your steps, to track your sleep, and to track your nutrition. And what I mean by all three of those is don't try and impress me. If you don't go for walks every day, don't go fucking take a walk just because I'm having you track it right now. If you don't, if you eat Snickers bars every day at noon, don't stop eating the Snickers bar at noon just because I'm telling you. I want you to do what you've been doing for the last year to 2 years that got us in this place, so I can assess where we're at, and then I could make these micro adjustments. Because believe it or not, reducing down from 30% to 10% is not hard. Now, don't confuse that with it's not hard in the sense of what we need to do. It's hard to be consistent and stick with it and follow it through, right? But as far as the principles, the things that we're going to do, it's actually not as hard as you would think it is. Getting below 10 is when things get really challenging and really tough as far as tweaking macros and getting crazy. So right now, what I want is I want you to track those three things, and I want you to show me what you're doing. Now, what I found over all the years of doing this is that there's almost always something that jumps right out at me nutritionally, right? So over 65% of the people are deficient in magnesium. More than half the people aren't getting enough vitamin D. Almost everybody is under consuming the amount of protein they need for their body. Most people are missing in fiber. Most people are over consuming in sugar, right? So I have all these things, and these are all kind of like levers that I want to be able to pull over the course of the next, say, 2 or 3 months with this person. And the first one I'm going to do, and there's a psychological piece to this, is I'm actually going to tell them to go get things before I tell them to take away things. And that might sound crazy. So let's pretend you wrote your diet down, and then there's McDonald's, 3 times, and an ice cream a couple times in there. And I don't, and those are obvious things that you probably know, and I know, that are not ideal to diet. But for psychological reasons, I'm not going to say, okay, Doug, cut this, and this all out of your diet. I'm actually going to look at the things that you're missing, which is almost always, like I said, there's always lack of probably vitamin D, lack of fiber, lack of protein. And I'm going to pick like one of them. It's almost always protein. And I'm like, all right, Doug, this is what I want you to do. I want you to hit your body weight in grams of protein, whatever your goal body weight is in grams of protein. So if you're a 250-pound person and you're overweight and you say, I want to be 190 pounds, we're going to get 190 grams of protein every single day. And I'm going to tell you to go get that. And that's all I want to focus on first. Now, why do I do that? If I tell a client to do that, and I'm not telling them they can't have these other things, there's a psychological game that I'm playing that they don't realize. I'm playing chess and they don't realize it. Is I know that if I tell them they can't have something, we are wired to rebel. And so if they feel like they're restricting and they can't, and they say those things, oh, my trainer said I can't have this, I can't do this, they might have the discipline to stick to that for a while, but eventually they'll hit a point where naturally they'll want to rebel. Versus if I say, hey, Doug, you got to hit your protein intake. That's all I want you to focus on every day. Let's be consistent with that. Let's not miss that. What I know will happen is it is extremely difficult to hit your protein intake every single day while also consuming all this other, because all that other fills up your calories, fills up your diet, and you end up lacking in the nutrients like protein that your body needs. And so, by me simply telling you to go after this protein intake, I know that naturally it's going to cut that out. And I know the power, the psychology of not telling you can't have those things, but just having you focus on it. It's so magical how this happens, right? So that's like step one. And right away, if we're coupling that with lifting weights, and I normally will start this person off with 3 times a week, full body training. Just, and there again, there's some psychology to that also, right? Like I know that in the course of the next year that we're going to be training together, there's going to be days that that person misses or there's inconsistencies. And I know if I'm hitting the body full time, 3 times a week, even if it was a rough week and we only get there 2 times a week, we're still hitting the entire body twice. And so all those muscles are getting worked. All those muscles are getting a signal sent to them that they need to develop, they need to grow or sustain. And so I know that that's one of the better ways to start almost anybody off with their training. So 3 days a week, full body training, and we're gonna hit the protein intake. That literally is gonna take that person in the first month 30% down, like 5-6%. You'd be blown away just that alone. And then I'm looking at the other things nutrition. I'm gonna go, okay, let's add 2 bowls of your favorite greens, right? You like Brussels sprouts, you like asparagus, whatever it is. Again, another strategy of me cleaning the diet up by adding things in there. I'm not telling them they can't have the bag of chips with their sandwich. All I'm saying is, hey, we need to get this bowl of vegetables also. We need to hit that protein intake now. Those are your 2 targets. And I'm starting to add things into this diet, knowing it's naturally kind of carving off all these things while I'm also lifting weights, sending a signal to the body to train. Mind you, I'm also considering I don't want to necessarily put this person in a major caloric restriction either. Like, I actually don't even want to manage calories quite yet. I know they're naturally going to get managed by changing their food choices because eating 6 to 8 ounces of meat to get to their protein intake is way less calories than them eating a bag of Lay's chips that is tons of calories, tons of carbs, and saturated fat, and hardly any protein. And when they get that out of the diet and they replace it with that steak, it's like they get this fulfilling high protein steak, and yet they don't get all these extra calories. So I already know that telling them to go after these foods without worrying about managing calories is going to naturally kind of shift the calories in the right place. Again, playing the psychological game to first hit that initial bump. So that's kind of where we start to get the first 5 to 8% body fat after that. Next, I'm going to start to dive into like their movement. Like I had them track those steps, so I have an idea. The average person, by the way, doesn't get more than 4,500 steps a day. That's the average person. Very rarely I will ever assess somebody and they're like doing 10,000 steps or more already. Like that's an anomaly. They're like a referee, they walk to work, or it's not normal, right? It's not normal to have somebody 30% overweight and also stepping 10,000 times. It happens, but it's rare. So that person's normally around 4,000 to 5,000 steps a day at most on average. Then I'm going to start getting them just to walk more. And I normally like to move it in increments of 1,000 to 2,000 steps, depending on where they're currently at. So now I'm going to get them to move a little bit more through steps. And we're hitting the protein intake. We're hitting our fiber intake. We're training 3 days a week. We're starting to build some muscle. If I've done a really good job, the scale doesn't move much. So with this person who's this overweight, after 30 to 45 days down the road, they're normally, by the way, discouraged. Adam, I haven't lost any weight on the scale. I'm still 200 and something pounds, and they're frustrated. But when I test their body fat percentage, if I did a really good job, I've already dropped down 3 to 5 to 8% body fat in this short period of time, but the scale hasn't moved, which means that I've built 4 or 5 pounds of muscle and I've lost 4 or 5 pounds of fat, and then their scale has stayed the same. I actually only want to use the scale for me, not for them, to know if I need to make any sort of calorie adjustments. That is, if I see someone drop too much weight too fast, then I actually will pivot, and then I'll tell them to add even more calories because I don't want to see this dramatic loss. And some people might be going, what? That's what this guy is 30% body fat. They need to lose all this weight. Why would you not want? Well, again, our goal right now is to change body composition, to reduce body fat. And part of that process I would like to build muscle along the way because that's only going to help our metabolism and only make the overall fat loss journey that much easier. If I just cut calories, move more, train hard, sure, I'll get a faster drop initially, but then your metabolism will adapt and then we'll have very little where to go. Versus if I don't move the scale much, but I add some muscle and I do lose some fat. So the scale weight stays the same, but I've added 5 pounds of muscle and I've lost 5 pounds of fat. That's a huge success after 30 to 45 days of training. Even 2 months. That's a massive success to have shifted our body composition that much, but not move that much on the scale. And that'll normally go 5-8% doing that process. And then after that, then it's getting them to gradually step more and move more, and over time, subtly getting their strength up, because that's going to increase volume in their training, right? So if I can add 5 or 10 pounds to the bar every couple of weeks on their bench press, their squat, or their deadlift, that's adding volume. That increased volume will burn more calories, will send a signal to build more muscle, will acquire more calories that their body needs, which will in turn keep them heading in that lower body fat percentage. And it's literally that game all the way to 10%. It is constantly just adding a little more activity, a tiny bit more intensity. And that one way to increase intensity would be getting stronger in the gym, adding more weight to the bar, and adding foods to the diet. That's the one that really blows people away, where they think that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm trying to lose body fat, but it is. It's adding foods that your body, what you should be eating. And what does that look like at the end? It's whole foods. If I'm at a place with this client where I have slowly added to their diet, and now let's say 30, 45 days, I have them assess and go, write down everything you ate this week. If I did a really good job of slowly adding foods, they'll look down at it and they're eating 4 to 6 times a day, depending on how hungry, how big, how much they're moving a day, 4 to 6 times a day. And, big portion of meat, nice serving of rice, sweet potato, yams, quinoa, something like that, and a good serving of vegetables. And they're doing that 4 to 6 times a day, and it's all whole food. And they're satisfied. They don't feel like they're starving the body. They don't feel that. In fact, many times they feel like they're eating a ton of food and they can't believe it. If I've done a good job too with balancing that out right all along the way, they feel the appetite increasing because they're building muscle. And you can easily take that person from 30 down to 10% over the course of a good amount of time. That's a 6 month journey, 6 to 8 month journey doing it that way. And if somebody is in a metabolic healthy position without any sort of other things going on, right? Like, and by the way, we started this conversation with optimizing health first, and we didn't address sleep yet. But if I had somebody who is only resting or sleeping 6 hours a night or something like that, that throws a whole wrench in all of this. And so it's important that, even though we're talking about nutrition and exercise, what they should do there, if I'm not paying attention to the other stress buckets that they have in their life, then I'm also doing a disservice, and there's a chance that this formula doesn't work. And it's not because this formula doesn't work because it's not proven or it's not the right path. It's that those things take a priority. Like, if you're only sleeping 6 hours a day and your body's stress hormones and hormones are all out of whack, well, then the body's not going to respond. It's not going to build muscle like it's supposed to. It's not going to burn body fat like it's supposed to. And so we have to address those things. So making sure that I'm speaking to them getting good sleep, making sure they're managing their stress, they're eating whole foods, they're adding the things that their body needs to their diet, they're strength training 3 times a week. And that is a recipe for 30% to nice and gradually go. And by the way, you didn't hear me say weigh your food out. You don't have to get crazy about tracking. The 30 to 10% journey is literally looks like that. The 10% to get me ready for stage. Now we're getting the scale out. Now we're getting granular with the macros. We are really pushing intensity in the gym and scaling volume over time. Like, the work to go from 10% to 5% is a whole nother world than getting somebody from 30%, which is a lot of unhealthy people, down to 10%. And 10% is a very reasonable, and I'm assuming we're talking about a male, because yeah.
So for people like you and I, we can see the progress of a client or the progress of somebody trying to do this when they sometimes can't because they're used to measuring progress by the scale. And we've heard you kind of mentioned this, that somebody might be dropping body fat, getting stronger, but because they don't feel like they're quote unquote lighter, they don't feel like they're making progress. What have been some effective ways that you've used to help your clients over the years measure progress without using the scale?
So I do like circumference measurements, so we can see like the gains that we're making in our arms, the waist staying the same or going down. So I like circumference, and I like pictures. And I like pictures once every couple weeks, and I'll have them. So when I was coaching virtually online, so coaching in person was different. I was seeing them all the time, but this became more challenging when I was virtual. And so this was like one of the challenges: is like, how do I make sure this person's staying on track, and how do I communicate this? And so what I would have them do was take a front, side, and back shot wearing the same bathing suit or outfit. Basically men, it would be like a shorts, no shirt on with that. Women would be like a bikini or something. And I would want to see the front, the side, and the back. And I'd want them to take it at the same time, first thing in the morning, say Friday mornings or whatever. And I'd want that every 2 weeks or so. And I would only use this when they would get discouraged. It's crazy how people cannot see the change on themselves. But as a trainer, you know this, and you're really good at being able to do this too. Like we've been looking at bodies for a long time. And so when somebody who is like so hung up and insecure about their belly or their arm fat or something like that, that's all they see, right? They don't notice that their shoulders are starting to develop this nice little cap. They don't notice that their waist is starting to taper in a little bit, or their thighs are actually getting some shape to them, like they're building muscle. They don't see that. All they see is the flabby arm or the belly fat, and they're like, I'm not changing. So I would use those pictures, and I would actually go over it with them. And I'd have the original ones that they sent me when we started. Said, man, Susie, look at this, or Doug, look at this, man. When you first started, like, look at how our shoulders were all sloped and you didn't have any. Look at the development on your shoulders and your traps right there. And man, look at your waistline. You're starting to have that V taper. And like, so I would help them see that, because you have a really hard time being non-biased and subjective when you are judging yourself, and then also encouraging them to see people they haven't seen. It's funny how that's a great formula for this too, is like, hey, when was the last time you haven't seen a cousin, an aunt, a family, someone who loves you, someone who genuinely cares about you? You haven't seen them in a month or so. And I would prescribe that. You need to go see somebody, because I'm telling you right now, as your trainer, you're doing great. You're looking good. It's a very slow process, especially when you do it the right way and the healthy way and the sustainable way. It's incremental change. And then always point to them, like, what do we do? How much more are we eating? Because if you've done a good job, their appetite is increased. They're eating more food than they've ever ate. They're stronger in the gym. And so I would point to those things, right? So part of our job as coaches and trainers too is like, we become so, like, everybody hires us to lose weight or to get in shape or to get shredded or so like that. Is like, is to part of the process is getting them to see the full health circle too, right? It's like, hey, don't forget, I know you want to look amazing in that bikini. I know we're going to get that 10%. That's my job. I'm going to take you there. But I'm also, it's important to me that I teach you about all the other things that this is providing for you besides just this look. Because if you become so fixated on that, you're going to find out you're never going to be happy. Because guess what? I've gotten on stage and been the most ripped dude in the building, and I can still point out flaws, and I'm still not happy, and I still want, like, that doesn't solve that feeling that you have. That is something much deeper rooted than a body fat percentage. So if we don't figure that out along the way of this journey, you're going to get there and still be unhappy. And it's 10% isn't going to make you happy like you think it's going to be. So my job is to help you realize all these other things, like your libido, your mood throughout the day, how well you're sleeping, how well you get up, your consistent energy through the day. We got rid of those dips that you originally were talking about, like bloat and feeling like you're retaining all this water. Like, we've gotten rid of that for you. Mental clarity and that fog that you used to have, like, we've gotten rid of that. Like, how sharp you, like, your performance at work, like, man, this is a beautiful part about this profession and what you're doing in this journey you're on. Like, it bleeds into so many things into your life that repay you more than just your body fat percentage. And please, as my client, please do not just get fixated on the 10%. I promise you I'm going to get you there. That's my job. But I gotta help you along the way see all these other things, because those are the things that I'm talking about. That's actually what's going to keep you going forever. The 10%, like, I'm going to show you, you're going to get there and you're going to be temporarily happy. I'm not going to lie, it feels good to look ripped. Like, it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Walk around with abs and people, oh my God, and compliment you. It's a great ego feed. But guess what? Just like getting rich, the same thing. Like, that shit wears off before once you've bought it all and you've had all, like, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, oh shit, like, there's more to life than just this. Guess what? Fitness is the same way too. Like, you will find out that even being the most shredded person in the world, it's like it's cool for a while and then it don't even matter anymore. And then all you have to fall back on are all the other things that it's done for your life. And if you've been so fixated on just becoming 10% body fat and you lose sight of all those other things, then that's why so many people fall off the wagon, because we don't have a getting in shape problem in this society. People get in shape all the time, all over the world. We have a staying in shape problem. We lose the body fat, we get in shape, and then what happens is people realize, oh, what's it all? It's not even that. It's cool. It was cool for a day. It was cool for my wedding. It was cool for Vegas for the weekend, but then it was like, not that important to me anymore, because we didn't do a good job of connecting the dots to all the other things that it was providing for you that you ignored because you were so fixated on the 10%. So to me, like, part of this journey of doing that and is teaching that to your clients while you're also getting them in shape.
Yeah, one of my favorite ways to show progress, specifically with men, is like, when they first start doing like a dumbbell bench press, they'll be like wobbling, like sometimes with like 15s, because they lack some shoulder and chest stability, and they're pressing 50s, and I'm like, bro, like a month ago or whatever, 6 weeks ago, you were like you were almost like rolling off the bench because you didn't have any stability in your upper body muscles with 15-pound dumbbells. Now you're pressing 50s. Like, there has to be, like, we don't need a body fat calculator. You have to have put on muscle. Like, it's impossible not to have put on muscle based on that. And and you're right. Like, people, they fall out of love, I think, with the process. They get so excited at first to start this journey, and then once things kind of settle in, they're like, how do I stay consistent? How do I not fall off the wagon? Would have been some things that you've helped your clients do, like maybe like some things they focus on every day or every week, to make sure that they're still like falling in love with the process of fitness.
Dude, it's 100% what I'm talking about. I mean, I'm a perfect example of this. Yeah, it doesn't get much more as far as the pinnacle of being ripped, right, or looking a certain way than becoming a men's physique pro, right? Like, that was like the peak of that. And so, how do I stay motivated to keep lifting it? It's like, has nothing to do with the way I look. Like, so on the show I shared the other day, like, it blows my mind. Like, I've connected these dots. I am such a better husband and partner at home when I get my workouts in. And it doesn't have to be a crazy workout. I don't have to have hit a PR. Just get a nice, good workout. Broke a little bit of a sweat, got a nice little pump, feel good. And what I notice is when I get home from work on days like that, I just have this, and I don't think about it. It just, I've now looked, this is me looking out and reflecting, like, high level. Like, I go right to, like, doing the dishes, straighten up the house, playing with my son, helping my wife out with the honeydew list. And it's like, and then the days when I miss training, especially if I miss a couple days in a row and I come home, I want to plop on the couch. And then I don't want to get up and wrestle with my son. And like, then I'm looking over at the kitchen and I'm like, oh, I need to get over there and clean. I don't want to do it right now. And like, it is wild, like, how different I am around the house. And so I've connected my training to being a better father and a better husband. And that's really important to me. That's the place I'm at in my life right now, is like, all I think about is being a great dad. And all I want to give my partner is to be an incredible husband. Right. And so that's part of what motivates me. And so I train that way. So when I lift, I'm not in there going like, oh, I got to hit this PR, or I got to stack more. It's like, what I'm thinking about is like, man, I get a good lift in right now, and I'm going to feel so good today. When I get home, I'm going to be a good dad. I'm going to be a good husband. And so, and that's my thing, right? So maybe you don't have a kid, and maybe you're not married, so it doesn't have to be that. So maybe you notice you crush work, And by the way, every client of mine that I've ever had that is on point with their training and their diet and like that, they've all told me like, man, I'm way more productive at work. I'm way better at my sales job. I'm way better at whatever it is you do. When you are a healthier, fitter version of yourself, you are better at everything. So take whatever it is you like to do. By the way, it could be a hobby. You could be a snowboarder. You could do whatever it is that you do. The healthier version of you is better at that. And so you just got to you have to learn to connect those dots. And so a good trainer does a good job of like finding that out about a person, right? So like you and I, we've probably trained everything under the sun, from an engineer to a teacher to an athlete to like a student to, so if we do a good job, like we're learning about them and the things that make them tick, right? If I got this high performing CEO who's not married, doesn't have a kid, I'm not going to talk to him about working out makes me a better father, and like that's why you should do it. Like
Right,
he don't
right.
give it. But talking to him about how much he's crushing it at work, and like, hey man, how when you run those meetings, have you ever connected the dots? Like, and I used to ask stuff like this, like, because I would know this about my clients, like, oh, big meeting he's got on Friday, right? He's got to speak to 300 people, or maybe he's got some big multi-million-dollar deal they're negotiating. Like, I'm training him, and then I'm talking to him afterwards, like, hey, can you tell a difference when you have those big meetings like that, like the way we trained this last week and your consistency around it? And always, when you help them make that connection, they go, "Oh yeah, you know what? Now you say it, like, yeah, no, I felt good. I felt real good going in this one." Or, they weren't training, and you help them connect the bad dots too. Like, hey, we kind of fell off for a couple of weeks. How's work been, or how are those meetings, or how those things? And they're like, "Oh man, Adam, I'm dragging ass, and I'm just sluggish in sales right now." And so, that's the key. The key is figuring out what makes this client tick. What are their passions, whether that be their home life, their hobbies, their work, whatever it is that they're in there doing, and then showing them and teaching them how much better they are at all those things when they're a healthier version of themselves, and getting them to say, this is why you're going to do this. You know why? Because that's a love. That hobby you do, you're probably going to do that for the rest of your life because it's a hobby, it's a passion. So let your training dictate, or let your training inspire you to be better at your craft or your hobby, because you're going to do that forever. And so, but getting 10% body fat, that's like a moment in time, or like getting shredded for a show. It's a moment in time that will come and go. And that's not what's going to keep you training forever. And by the way, if you're so fixated on the way you look, and that is because, by the way, we have examples of this all over on Instagram of coaches and trainers that are obsessed with the way they look. Those people are still broken. They're training from a place of insecurity. They're training because they're still so insecure with the way they look that they have to do those things. And they've presented to you in the world like they've got it all together, but they're just as fucking broken as the 30% body fat guy, maybe worse. And so you got to help them understand that too. Like all these people that we celebrate and we put on pedestals, like they're so special. It's like, nah, most of them are fucking massively insecure, and they're running from something, and they're so afraid and so insecure that they've become obsessed with the way they look, and they're not truly happy. They're not truly balanced. They're not truly healthy. And so, yeah, my job as a trainer when I'm training these clients is to teach them all that, right? Because they don't. A lot of them don't think that. I didn't think that. I didn't look at the fittest people, in the world and think that they were massively insecure. I learned that over years or decades of being in this space of like, oh shit, they're some of the most broken people. Yet all of my overweight clients look at them and think that they're so special. And I'm like, and so helping them realize that too, like, hey, be careful what you wish for. Like those people, just because they walk around with abs year round, do not think for 1 minute that they're happy or have it all figured out. Like that's not true health. True health looks like the ability to stay healthy, stay fit, but then also be able to enjoy a nice dinner with your wife and have a couple glasses of wine and not feel like you have to count your calories and your macros, and to miss 3 or 4 days in the gym but still be okay and still stay healthy, because you've learned that when you miss those days of working out, those aren't the days you also eat your dessert. Those are the days that you stay a little more tight on the diet and you don't eat like and like you've learned true balance. You've learned how to utilize, food and enjoying those things with your family and friends, and yet and still balancing it with staying healthy and fit. And like that's the place I want to get you. And that's what I'm always trying to communicate to my clients, is connecting those dots.
I've had multiple like emotional rock bottoms in my life, and outside of my addiction emotional rock bottoms in jail, my biggest emotional rock bottom was when I was like 5% body fat and had like every ab and was super shredded. And I thought that being that would get me like the hot girls and a great relationship and vanity and status and validation and security, but it just made me more broken. Like just like you said, like I was the guy that like was chasing that, and I was even more pissed that I mean, at that time, more than I was when I was even doing drugs, because I felt like this was going to be something that was good for me to be like this ripped because it was like legal. I was like, God dang it. I've been chasing after the wrong thing for so long. And it's like you got to keep drinking out of the cup, and you got to fill the cup a little bit more and a little bit more each time to get the same feeling. And, I felt that way. And it wasn't until like I started to unpack like why I was chasing that I started to have a better relationship with fitness, because I was the guy traveling on planes with chicken and broccoli, and I wasn't even competing. Like I was the guy that wouldn't go out with my friends and eat because I was worried that I was gonna like not be able to see my abs in the morning. So I totally relate to and get what you're saying in that, like, sometimes the some of the most ripped people on the internet are just as broken, if not more broken, because they have like this body dysmorphia, which is incredibly hard to um to break. I mean, it's super hard. So thanks for bringing that up.
It reminds me a lot of my financial journey. So I had the same insecurities around money and thought that when I reached a certain dollar amount that I would be this happy person too. It's funny how both those things are so similar. That, oh, the six pack abs is going to bring me all this happiness and joy. Oh, the $1 million in my bank account is going to bring me all this happiness. And what you find out, if you ever get to experience one or the other, or lucky enough to experience both, they're both not. They're both not the answer to happiness. And there's so many other things in life that are going to bring you joy and happiness, and also health. Because same thing with like fiscally healthy or financially healthy. I mean, I like to talk about financial health like I talk about your fitness health. Like there's a good relationship with money that is healthy, and it doesn't mean just having a bunch of zeros in the bank account. Just like there's a good relationship with exercise and nutrition, and it doesn't mean you're weighing and measuring and you're never miss a day. It doesn't. Neither one of those are right. They're both tools to enhance your life, and you have to learn to use them both in that manner. And it just, I don't know, it takes some time. It's taken me a long time. I'm 40 something years old now. I'm finally figuring all that stuff out. But our jobs as trainers is to help fast track our clients there, right? Is to help paint that picture for them. Because just imagine, you and I are fitness professionals, and yet we were blinded by it for a long time, right? Or we fell into the traps ourselves. So just imagine the average person who absolutely has no idea, who really thinks that all those people on Instagram are the healthiest people. Like they still connect six pack abs and looking awesome as healthy. And what you and I know from our experience and all the people that we've met is like, oh my God, not only is that not true, it's almost the complete opposite. Like when I got into competing, one of the things that I was blown away by it. I saw more. Okay, there was a time where I managed a gym across the street from the clinic that used to do the gastric bypass. So I had a ton of people right across the street from Kaiser, and so I had a ton of people that were like Biggest Loser obese coming through my gym all the time. So I dealt with a lot of that, right, and a lot of those clients. And then I get into the competing world, and I say this all the time that I saw more eating disorders and poor relationships around exercise and food with the competitors and bodybuilders than I did with the severely obese people looking for gastric bypass. That's how fucked up it is. That's how fucked up they are. What they've hacked into, or what they've done, is they have, and the credit that I always gave them is they have incredible discipline, and they have the ability to sacrifice their friends, their family, their nutrition, their social life to pursue and obsess over this look. And they're great at it. They're great at numbing themselves and heading towards this pursuit. By no means are they this shining example of health. And yet our clients, that the average person who hires us, they think that because those people are portrayed as these great examples of health and fitness, and it couldn't be further from the truth.
So obviously, what we're talking about and going after vanity is like a huge mistake people make trying to go on any sort of health journey. Regarding like the 30% to 10% body fat journey, a lot of what you've shared might be completely like new to certain people because people might read like, oh, I got to cut carbs, I got to cut fat, I got to fast, I got to do all these things. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making constantly with this stuff that's actually slowing down their progress?
By the way, it's the thing that speeds up the progress right out the gates, so it's very deceiving, right? It's too much, too fast, too soon. For a lot of reasons, not just metabolically, that's a bad idea. Nutritionally, that's a bad idea. Adaptation, that's a bad idea. Psychologically, that's a bad idea. When people are motivated, and it's either a New Year's resolution, your wife or your partner said something that just hits you in the core, like, oh my God, it hits an insecurity, right? So you're insecure about something. Doctor tells you, hey, you got to go fix this. So we have these moments where we have this extreme motivation around making change, which is good. It's good that you feel motivated that you need to make change. The mistake that they almost all make is too much, too fast, too soon. And what I would tell them is that, the goal should be this: is every time you do something in your life that like a health or a change, is ask yourself, like, could I see myself doing this forever? And if you go like, oh God, no, I wouldn't want to do this forever. Well, that's a real clear indication of like, this is definitely too much, too fast, too soon. And so you have to, and the way the body adapts is not the more you throw at it, the more results you get. Like, our bodies are these incredible adaptation machines. And so the body composition change, right? So losing body fat, building muscle is there's a lot of science to it. It's not as simple as just do more and you get more. So that's what makes this really different. And that's the mistake that these people make, is thinking that way. So, there's a famous thing that I say on our podcast all the time that it's gone all over the place, right? My goal is always to do as little as possible to elicit the most amount of change. So when I approach diet and exercise, I want to change as little as possible in my diet and my routine to elicit the most amount of change. So I'm always seeking for that. I'm always going, okay, and I'm always judging like that. So when I decide, like today, if I go lift after this and I'm going to go do a routine, and tomorrow, the way I will assess if I did it well, what it will be, I felt like I can feel that I worked out. So there's like this real mild, maybe kind of soreness from the lift the day before, but not bad at all. Like, not at all like where I'm like, ooh, sort of the touch or sort of move, or it makes me walk different. If I feel like that at all, my reflection, and I still have this still happens to me. I go, God damn it. I did too much. I didn't need to do that. There was no reason for me to do that, because my body, if I do just enough to it, to that I more than what I was doing the day before, it will elicit change. It's a new signal. If you don't ever go for a walk and all of a sudden you walk 30 minutes every day, that will elicit change. If nothing else changes, only adding 30 minutes of a walk every single day, nothing else changes, it will elicit change. Well, then the body will adapt, and then you won't see change. And then you have to do another thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. Same thing for the diet. If you have this diet all over the board and you're eating all this bad stuff, and then all of a sudden you go, hey, I'm going to hit my protein intake just for that, it will elicit change. And so they go way too hard. So I want to do these little incremental changes in the diet and in my training, and just slowly build on that and build. And also there's a psychological piece to that. It's like you're building wins. So if I give a client, just because I can handle all this training and I'm all motivated, like, and by the way, young trainer Adam used to do this, where Someone would come in, they'd be like, "Oh, Adam, I got a really busy life. I can only commit to 2 days a week of training." I'd be, "Oh, come on, you can't find a third hour or a fourth hour to get in the gym." Like and then I do the whole like, there's 24 hours in a day, and you sleep this much, you work. You know what I'm saying? Like it was so bad. Like
Yeah, I did it
that
too. I
was the
did it
type of
too.
training.
Yeah, I did it
Yeah,
too.
we're all guilty of that, right? Like
Yeah.
coming from the motivational, I need to motivate this person to be in the gym. Such a terrible approach. Opposite approach now. Someone goes, "Adam, I can only do 2 hours a week." And I'm like, perfect. Great place to start. Let's just start with 2 hours a week. That's excellent. Sure. Are you sure you can do two? You want to start with one? And I'll even go the other direction. They're like, "Oh, no, I could definitely do." Okay, great. Let's start there. And I would start there. And then if they weren't doing 2 hours of training before, and now I got 2 hours of weight training, and I'm also impacting the way they potentially their nutrition. Oh my God, I can show massive change in somebody's body by just strength training full body 2 times a week and making good food choices. I could, by the way, I could take that 30% body fat person down to 10% by doing that. In fact, Sal's story of Doug and how they met is that Doug was a chronic overtrainer and wanted to be ripped. That's why he hired Sal. And Sal moved him all the way down to 2 times a week. And Doug built more muscle and got more shredded than he'd ever been in his life in his mid 40s training with Sal. And that's their story. And it was 2 days a week. That's all they trained. And he made sure he had his protein intake, fed his body, took care of his sleep, and his body responded and changed. And so that's the mistake, is doing too much too fast. And so I would caution people and say, hey, let's commit to this, and then we'll add a little bit, then we'll add a little bit over time, and you're way better off than making that decision when you're super motivated.
You mentioned that going from 30 to 10 is essentially, if you do the right thing and kind of follow the approach that you're talking about, it's essentially smooth sailing. And you really don't have to make major adjustments until you're trying to break 10. Do people tend to hit a plateau when they hit like 20% or 15%? Have you noticed that?
Every individual is different, and yes, like and because I've been doing this a long time, there's like different levers that I tend to know to pull. Like for example, Katrina helps a lot of her girlfriends out, right? Because obviously she's been with me for a long time, and so they always come to her, right, for advice on training. And so this just happened not that long ago. She came to me and she's like, "Hey, Danielle's like she's plateaued, and she's doing everything you've taught me to teach them, and she's hitting her protein intake and this and that, and she's just not seeing results." And I know the person, and so I kind of know her personality, and so she's the type of client that I would have that is timid, probably way stronger than she realizes she is. And so I remember telling Katrina, I said, "When was the last time you worked out with her?" And she's like, "Oh, I haven't trained with her at all since she's been following her." I tell her, I said, "Go lift with her." And I said, "Go squat and deadlift and see if she's pushing herself." I said, "I bet she's just putting the weight on the bar, the same weight on the bar, and she's not really trying to push weight anymore. She's just comfortable with what she's doing." And sure, Katrina's like, "Oh my God, Adam, she was literally doing 135. She was doing 185 by the end of the workout. Like we added 80 pounds to her squat just by Katrina encouraging her, like, you could do more than that. Let's put more on." And boom, she like rocketed through that plateau. And so with some clients, it's that tends to be more of a female trait. Guys sometimes are doing more than they should. Like, oh, Adam told me just to do this, but I'm going to go do this also. So I got to assess what they're doing, right? They're extreme. Oh, if Adam said do this, I'm going to do that and this. Or he told me only to cut these things out, I'm going to cut this and cut that. Or I'm also going to go for a run on Saturday too. Like, and they like to like overdo it. So, and they tend to run higher stress levels. They tend to disregard sleep. And so sometimes adjusting something like that, like, it's normally smooth sailing. If we feed the body what it needs, whole foods, we strength train 3 days a week, we take care of sleep and hydration and the basic things, and we're an overall healthy person, hormonally, blood panels, everything like that. If that's all normal, it should be really smooth sailing. But there are little like tweaks, and it's normally my women, it's convincing them they need to push more. Normally it's my men having them not do more than what I tell them to do. Another one, if you weren't following my programming, it would be program design. So that's a common one too, which I would also say with guys, because guys are I mean, this is guys and girls, but I mean guys even more so. I feel like love to do the stuff they're good at, because they want to impress the chicks in the gym, and so they do the same shit all the time just so the girls can see how much weight they move on the whatever machine or whatever exercise. What they don't want to do is some bullshit, side lunge or right? Like guys don't want to do that stuff,
Step
but
ups. Yeah.
yeah, step ups, right? Those are all bullshit exercises of fucking hella hard to do. But those movements are because they never do them will garner the most change and results. And so guys, a lot of times it's just me making some adjustments to their programming. Guys too are notorious for like staying stuck in a rep range. You either have the bodybuilder bro guys that love the supersets, high reps, and they do all this supersetting, pumping exercises that airs them all up. Or I have my powerlifting guys that never want to train higher than 5 or 6 reps. And so there's some tweaks there that I can go like, oh, like when was the last time you trained in the 15 rep range? Or when have you ever done 20 reps of a squat? And most of them are like, oh my God, I've never. I'm like, okay, let's do that. And so normally I can make some adjustments, programming that will break through some of those plateaus if we have a plateau.
One of the biggest adjustments I've made in my own workout program, and I've done a couple of the mind pump programs. I think the last one I did was anabolic, which I really liked a lot because it changed what I normally do. Because normally I'm the guy that's like push pull legs, 3 on 1 off. I'm even doing that for a while just because it's just my body seems to respond well to it. But like doing some of the mind pump programs has actually just helped me because I mean I don't have to think about it. I go and I'm like, all right, this is the routine for today. I trust these guys. I want to support them. They're my friends, and I know how to push myself with sets. But one of the things that I've changed is the amount of time that I rest because I used to just do a set and I'm like, well, I feel okay. I'll just go back into it with like 45 seconds to a minute rest. But I found that when I rest like 2 to 3 minutes in between sets, especially on my big lifts, my gains are so much better. And I'm sure you can attest to this as well.
Oh, bro, this is I mean, you're hitting on like so we did an episode. I don't remember what it was titled. I think it was like the 7 ways to break a plateau or something like that. Something along those lines. One of my favorite things to do, two things, and you hit on one of them to my guys to break a plateau. And these are guys like you that are like lifters, they know what they're doing and they're at a plateau. Two go-to moves for me is changing your rest period or changing your tempo. Because the and tempo is one of my favorite to mess with because I was like the true most guys want to build muscle hypertrophy, right? And the true protocol for hypertrophy is a 4-2-2 tempo, which is a 4-second negative, 2-second pause, 2-second positive, right? No, but if you walk in the gym and count somebody's tempo, I bet you will not find one person that does a true 4-second tempo, 2-second pause, 2-second up on any exercise. And so it's like such an easy go-to thing to adjust. Or like you said, rest periods. Almost everybody, and this is both sexes, are guilty to resting about the same. They change their exercises, they might change some sets and reps, but they always kind of rest the same. And so like one of my favorite things to do is assess, are they and there, by the way, there's tend to be on one end or the other of the spectrum. You're either the circuit bro who like never rests longer than a minute, or the cardio chick who loves classes, never rests more than 30 seconds to a minute, or you're the powerlifting dude that rests for 5 minutes between every set. And the best thing to do is to send them on the opposite spectrum, and they see huge results right away. Like, oh, you're the cardio girl or the superset bro who never rests for a minute. I'm going to make you rest 3 minutes. And it's going to drive you crazy, but I'm going to make you rest 3 minutes, and I'm going to really stretch your capacity to put more weight on the bar. And let's focus on being strong and lifting like a power lifter. And if you're my power lifter guy who loves to rest for 3-5 minutes in between, I'm going to blow your mind, and I'm going to be like, no more rest than a minute. And we're going to go from exercise to exercise, exercise. And both those are great plateau breakers for people.
Well, Adam, this has been awesome. I think the audience is going to really, really love this conversation. So much wisdom, so much insight. If they're not listening to the podcast already, or they're not following you on social media, where's the best place to connect?
Mind Pump anywhere, dude. We're over on everybody. If you don't know where we're at in the fitness space, I'm going to get on to you over there. So if you've been paying attention, you should know where Mind Pump is at. We're on every single platform: Spotify, YouTube. Tons. I always tell people go take advantage of all the free stuff, right? So mindpumpfree.com. Watch all the free stuff. We have tons of white papers. We have newsletter, blogs, everything that goes out. Like, read the stuff. We have the clips channel too, which people love that are all the short clips of all the stuff we have. But the best thing to do is to literally go to your iTunes app, and just whatever topic you want to learn about, search it in there. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, we have one of the top podcast episodes related to that topic. We've probably covered it. So check it out.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you again for this conversation. I appreciate you, and the audience, like I said, is going to get a ton of value out of this. So thanks again for your time.
Thank you, brother. Always good talking to you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, I really think you're going to like this video as well. I'll see you there.